Hi there everyone, it's Misty here from TheJollyFatElf. Thank you so much for joining me. In today's video, I have another card in my 2022 holiday card series. This is the 41st video for this series. I have posted a lot of holiday content for you guys. Oh my goodness. So I'm going to go ahead and do a card today using this ornament stamp set from Pink Fresh Studio. So some of their suites now include like foil plates, dies, stencils, stamps, and they all kind of coordinate. So this is one that has all of those, but I don't have a hot foil machine. Maybe Santa will bring me one. I doubt it, but maybe he will. So we're just going to be stamping and die cutting today. So you can see that these are already colored, and that's because I did this initially and I didn't like the way it turned out. So I'm going to be trying different things. So there are 3 stencils, and up in the top left corner, it says stencil 1, stencil 2, stencil 3. So stencil 1 is the first layer, stencil 2 is the second, stencil 3 is the third. So one thing I'm going to be doing is kind of going where I want the red, and then we're going to also be using turquoise or aqua, and I'm going to be going in that way as well. And that's where I really did myself a disservice when I first started this. And normally I would share that with you, but if I did, this video would be forever long. So normally I would, I did myself a real disservice. So practicing first felt like it was a good idea. I also tried this card last night, actually, and my thought process was I wanted to do clear embossing on black watercolor paper and then use my shimmer watercolors to paint. And that's what you see over on the right hand side. That little bitty rectangle is actually watercolor paint. And I can't remember, Paul Walker maybe? I don't remember. But I think any kind of shimmer watercolor paint will do. Now, I am not stamping on watercolor paper. This was Nina 110-pound cardstock. So it's not watercolor paper, but it's still really, really thick. But when we get to that point, I'm not going to be adding any extra water. I'm just going to be using whatever I put in the actual paint. So I put just a little bit in the paint to get it activated, and we're going to go from there. So I'm using Gina K Design inks. Sea glass, lipstick. Yeah, sea glass and lipstick. Initially I used 4 and I was like, no, I don't like to look at this. So I would much rather add in, just go over with a second layer than use a 4th color. But then I ended up going ahead and go over it with paint anyway. So there you go. So yeah. This card is not going to be available in the holiday or in my Etsy shop, although I have hundreds of others that are. I know we're getting really, really close to Christmas, so a lot of people have already sent out their cards, but you can buy them and save them for next year, or just frame them, or I don't know, give them as a gift. I don't know. And then next week, the 19th, is the first day of Hanukkah, so I am going to try to do at least a couple of Hanukkah cards. The unfortunately is I just don't really have a lot of Hanukkah stuff, and that's on me. But there's also not a lot of Hanukkah stuff out there, which is on craft companies. So I know that I have a digital stamp from Stamp Anything. And then I know that, I can find some files in the Silhouettes Cut store. So I've had someone ask me for Hanukkah stuff, and I should have made some before now. I apologize. I really should have. But we're going to do that. We're also going to do the Nativity next week. And then I have a special surprise for Christmas Eve. I'm so excited for Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. You have no idea. And I cannot believe a week and a half away from that. And you guys, today I woke up late. I went to bed late. Excuse me. Rob was up until talk about being in bed late and I slept on. Rob was up until 2. And I kept feeling like I was going to have a leg cramp, so I couldn't fall asleep. And I didn't get in bed till 1:30. I went to bed right before he did. And so I woke up late because I had to take, I took a medication to stop my leg cramp. And I woke up because there was a huge rumble of thunder. And I was like, what? So when I woke up, he's like, yeah, there's a tornado warning north of us. And he said, I was going to wake you up when there was a warning. I was like, probably wake me up before we get to that part so I have time to throw on clothes and we can get in the shelter. I said, but I'm up and it was okay. And luckily we didn't. Grapevine, there was some, Grapevine, Fort Worth had some damage. There was a video of someone who was on the highway during rush hour and they were taking video of the tornado. And I was like, I would have lost my brain. For those of you who've been with me for a while know that we actually had a tornado really close to us back in 2015. It was the day after Christmas. It was awful. So close. It was awful. And I grew up in Oklahoma and I've been terrified of storms my entire life. So no thank you to the storms. And I hate it when it's like this time of year because they're so unpredictable. Like in spring, they kind of follow a pattern, but when it's not springtime or tornado weather or whatever, you know what I'm talking about? It just, it's scary. It's scary. So this is the Make Art big one by Wendy Vecchi. And first I was like, I'm just going to paint on this. And then I was like, no, I'm not. So I brought in a clipboard because I needed to be able to tilt this to be able to see. So again, I've just put a little bit of water in that little bitty watercolor. And again, these are all metallic watercolors. And I'm using a very, very, very fine detail brush to color in where I want it to be white. So I went ahead, and this was before I decided to go ahead and color everything, but I'm glad I did because you're going to, depending on how thin your watercolors are, you're going to want some underpainting a little bit. And that's just the process where you put ink underneath it. So, and here are my green and my red. And I tried to do just like some, just in spots, but I ended up I was like, I like this too much. I should just keep going. And so I did. And again, this is not watercolor paper, but it's a very thick paper. And as you can see, I didn't add any extra water. I'm not washing off the brush with some water. I have a baby wipe to the right of me when I'm changing colors. So I wasn't adding any extra water, and this really didn't get warped whatsoever. It wouldn't have mattered all that much because I'm going to cut these out with a die. So yeah, and my only issue, okay, so for this one, it's not too bad, but Pink Fresh has started doing, when it has a stencil like this, it's one big stamp. So when I did my video for Scrapbook Pal, if you missed it, it went up earlier in the month. I had to cut it in half. Because all I had was that little Misty. And even I would have had to have the 12 by 12 Misty, which is like $115 or $125 in order to get it done. So I was like, I'm just going to cut it apart. And it was photopolymer, so it's not that big of a deal. But I'm like, that's like, not very many crafters have the means to do that. So I really wish they wouldn't do that. I mean, I can probably understand why they do it, but yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and get this lined up. I'm going to bring it right in front of my vase so I can see, and I'm going to get those cut out. And this is what they look like when we're done. So a couple of them cut off. That was the other thing. It's like, okay, this doesn't really fit in the Misty all that well. So yeah, I got it done, but yeah. But yeah. And there's, you can see that little hint of shimmer. So I just happened to have this scrap piece of gray paper that was 3 1/4 inches, 3 1/4 or 3 1/8 inches wide. And I cut it down to 6 1/2, and I'm making a mini slimline card. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of layer these on. Some of them are going to hang off. Some of them are going to be, all the way on. And I'm just going to go ahead and layer these on and adhere them down with tape runner. And then I'm going to cut them off. So you can kind of see here, they're really sparkly and really pretty. And this was actually very therapeutic, meditative, whatever you want to say. I had Emily Day Baker on in the background and was just, taking care of this while listening to her. And that's what I think I tell you that all the time. I normally just turn on some YouTube, or I was also watching about not Henry, Louis the 14th, 15th, and I guess it was the 16th, their reign and all of that stuff. Like I love history. Like I really do love history. And I think I've said it before. I feel like I'm Anne Boleyn reincarnated. Maybe not, but maybe so. But so once I get these adhered, I'm going to go back with a micron pen to add back in some of the details that were taken away by the paint. As you can see up on the top left there, I have one ornament, and I was like you couldn't really see it because of the paint that went over the black ink. But I went ahead and brought that back in and just went ahead and added more black pen to it. And the Micron pens are archival, so they are Copic friendly. I didn't color with Copic, but they're also like waterproof. That's why I was like, well, I have to have this one. And then I was like, okay, well, I have to add in some lines. And I did that, all of them. And I used a 0.05, I think. So this was another scrap piece of paper I had. You guys know I have that bag of scraps, and this is the reason why I keep it that way I could cut this down. So it was about 1/8 of an inch all the way around. And then I brought in a piece of cardstock, and I thought I cut it down correctly, but of course I didn't. So I'm going to go ahead and get it adhered, and then we're going to trim it down. So this ended up making almost a mini slimline. I think it's a little bit longer than a mini slimline, but I went ahead and lined it up, and then I opened it up to cut off the back and then cut off the bottom. And that was just a quick way to get that taken care of. That way I wouldn't have to rescore, because I was thinking I'd already scored it. I was like, I'm not doing this again. So once I've done that, I'm bringing in the scrap piece of paper that I cut off. I tried this with red and black and cut it out. I didn't like it. So I've brought in, I think this is the turquoise one from Gina K. I don't remember what it's called. But I went ahead and stamped that onto the same cardstock that we used for the card base. And the first stamp it's never good, I think, when you're using the Gina K inks. I don't feel like the first one is ever great. But the second one was perfect, and I'm just cutting that down to size. And you guys know I have to have that right in front of my face because I cannot see. But once we do that, I'm going to bring in some foam adhesive, and we're going to get this adhered. And then I thought maybe I would put ribbon or something. Initially, I thought I was going to pierce the paper and look like they were stringed, or like hung on string. And I was like, no, we're not going to do that either. So I decided to go ahead and bring in some flat back pearls, and we're going to adhere those. I'm going to put a pearl on every hanger, and then I'm going to put 3 pearls on where the sentiment is. And that once I do that, that's it. I didn't add any other embellishment. I didn't add any other shimmer. I didn't want anything to really detract from the ornaments, which is why I liked the color on color, the kind of monochromaticness of it all. So that's it, friends. Thank you so much for joining me. Let me know what you think of this card in the comments down below. I'd love to hear from you. All of your engagements helps the channel grow. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them down below as well. I hope you have a good day, night, weekend, wherever you are. I love your faces, and I'll see you Friday for another video. Bye for now.